Think you're ready to rough it when society collapses? Guess again. Before your fancy survival kit ever comes out, medieval peasants were already building fireproof pits and boils fresh water from muddy streams, without solar panels or purifiers. Today, we'll blitz through 5 lost medieval survival secrets every prepper must master, from flint and steel sparks that survive rainstorms to clay-lined grain vaults that shrug off rodents. Strap in, these old-school hacks aren't dusty folklore, they're the blueprint for staying alive when your batteries die. 1. Mastering the flint and steel spark. When rain hammers your tarp and your lighter's gas runs dry, nothing beats the medieval flint and steel trick. Forget fancy ferro rods. Peasants carried chunks of flint and a hardened steel striker in leather pouches larger than a modern pocket knife. Here's how they turned stones into life-saving fire. They'd select a sharp-edged flint, often flaked from river cobbles, and hold it firmly against a carbon-rich steel bar. A brisk, shaved wood tinder bundle lay beneath. In one swift scrape, the steel shaving off microscopic iron particles ignited on contact with the flint silica, spitting glowing sparks into the tinder. Within seconds, this bundle smoldered. Gently blow it into roaring flame. No lighter fluid required. Medieval woodsmen protected their sparks from wind and rain by digging a shallow Dakota hole, not a modern invention but a centuries-old design. 2 small pits connected by a narrow trench created a sheltered chamber. The fire started in the deeper pit, shielded from gusts, while the trench channeled air, feeding oxygen. This simple pit cut wind chill and preserved embers overnight, ready for rekindling at dawn. Flint and steel kits doubled as status symbols. Monastic travelers prized their brass-bound fire steels engraved with crosses, proof the monastery supported your journey. Guild regulations in the 14th century even standardized striker sizes, ensuring sparks at every market fair. That level of quality control meant villagers could barter for replacement steels when theirs wore smooth. Today's preppers swap out flint for modern ferrocerium rods, but the principle remains identical, and medieval tips still apply. Scrap old carbon steel files into strips for improvised strikers. For tinder, skip cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly and harvest punky inner bark from cedar or poplar, just as your medieval counterparts did. Build your fire pit low to the ground. Bury rough-cut wood in a small cavity to cradle coals and guard against wind. Master this old-school technique, and you'll spark flame in weather that would douse disposable lighters. When modern gear fails, remember, medieval ingenuity distilled down to a handful of steel and stone still ignites survival. 3. Building a self-insulated natural shelter. Tired of lugging a tent that rips and leaks? Medieval shepherds stayed warm in winter with shelters they cobbled together in under an hour. No nylon required. Here's the blueprint. First, find a natural windbreak, a cluster of boulders, a fallen log, or the leeward side of a dense thicket. Lean 3 sturdy saplings against each other to form a tripod. Then bind their tops with cordage made from stripped inner bark or braided grasses, the kind medieval villagers twisted for bucket handles. Next, weave a framework of thinner branches horizontally across the saplings, creating a rib cage. Don't aim for neatness. Leave small gaps for ventilation. Then plaster the outer surface with a mix of mud, clay, and dry leaf litter, exactly as medieval timber-clad huts repelled rain and held heat. This daub seals cracks and traps, insulating air pockets. Finish by thatching the roof with long grass or straw, layering from bottom to top so water sheds off each row. No soaked lean-tos here. Pack more dry leaves inside for a soft, insulating floor. The result? A snug A-frame that holds body heat without a stove. This isn't fancy glamping. It's a medieval proven design that uses materials around your feet. In cold conditions, its thermal mass and air trapping rivals modern bivy sacks. And when you collapse it, you leave no trace, just scattered leaves and a bit of mud. Next up, finding and purifying water with medieval savvy. Stick around, because it's not just boiling and filtering. 5. Locating and purifying water the medieval way. When your high-tech filter fails, know that medieval villagers had zero gear yet drank safely. First, they read the land, look for lush green meadows, animal tracks converging on low spots, or the whisper of a hidden spring in a rocky outcrop. They trusted indicator plants like watermint and willow, their roots diving deep to quench thirst. Once you've scored a water source, skip chemical tablets. They didn't have them either. Instead, harvest clean clay or fine river sand. Build a layered filter in a hollowed gourd or wooden bucket. Coarse gravel on top, then sand, then activated charcoal, medieval wood charcoal works, and finish with a layer of grass or moss. Pour water slowly. Gravity draws out particulates. For the final kill step, heat medieval style. Carve or hollow a clay pot, set it in your fire pit, and bring water to a rolling boil. In absence of metal cookware, heated stones can be dropped into the container, just as villagers did before pots became common. Let stones cool outside before handling. By combining natural indicators, DIY filtration, and rock-heated boiling, you mirror medieval pragmatism. No pumps, no cartridges, just observation, layered purification, and heat. Stick around for the next skill, medieval food preservation that beats any freezer. 6. Sun and smoke, food preservation. Think refrigeration is a modern miracle? Medieval villagers stored meat and grain for months without electricity or vacuum sealers. Here's how they did it, and how preppers can copy those low-tech hacks today. First off, meat drying wasn't just hanging slabs in the sun. Peasants built smoking sheds, simple timber frames fitted inside a lean-to roof. Beneath the floor, embers of oak or fruit wood smoldered, producing gentle smoking heat. They sliced meat into thin strips, wooden skewered or hung from rafters, and left vents slightly ajar so smoke drifted through but rain stayed out. The combination of salt curing and slow smoke penetration removed moisture, infused antimicrobial phenols from the wood, and created a crust that shut out insects. In as little as 3 days, that stack of venison or pork turned into jerky that would keep through winter. Now, sun-drying grain required discipline. Instead of dumping oats or barley on tarps where birds and rodents feasted, medieval farmers built raised drying racks, woven willow poles set on adjustable tripods. As the midday sun beat down, wind passed beneath, carrying away moisture. Once grain cracked and rattled dry, they transferred it into clay-lined subterranean bins known as earth houses. These underground vaults were pest-resistant. Cool soil temperatures prevented mold, while the clay lining kept out beetles. A weekly rake-through with a hooked tool sufficed to shake out any invaders. For modern preppers, these techniques translate directly. Craft a simple smokehouse with salvaged pallets and a low fire pit, using locally sourced hardwood chips. Dry your game or chicken with charcoal light smoke, not just electric dehydrators. And for grains or legumes, build an insulated bin by digging a hole, lining it with a food-grade tarp or clay plaster, and covering with a weighted lid. No fancy Mylar bag necessary. It's not just about survival theater. During famines or when storms knock out power, being able to store protein and carbs safely saves lives. Medieval smoke and sun methods required no batteries, no processed chemicals, only salt, timber, and patient craftsmanship. Plus, they double as barter goods. Homemade jerky and heirloom grains win trust in any crisis economy market. By blending salt cures, smoke infusion, and earth-cold storage, you create a pantry that laughs at grid failures. Next time you stock up, remember, medieval kitchens invented these tricks. If they could feed armies besieged for months, they can keep your bug-out pantry stocked too. 7. Herbal First Aid and campsite sanitation. Let's face it, antibiotics and hand sanitizer are luxuries in a real SHTF scenario. But medieval healers had their own dispensaries in the countryside, and those remedies still beat doing nothing. Start with plantain leaves, not the banana relative, but the broadleaf weed that grows everywhere humans trample. Crush the fresh leaves between stones until they weep a sticky green juice. Then spread it on insect bites, minor cuts, or poison ivy rashes. Medieval herbals praise plantain for its anti-inflammatory compounds. Today's studies confirm its ability to reduce swelling and draw out toxins. Tie the leaf poultice down with a strip of linen or vine, change daily, and watch redness fade. Next up, charred cotton and clay for bleeding wounds. That charcoal cloth wasn't some modern EMS trick. It was standard issue. When a knight's mail shirt couldn't bend around a gash, surgeons packed blackened linen into the wound. The charcoal absorbs bacterial toxins and controls bleeding, while clay's natural alum content helps constrict vessels. Dish out a fingerful of this paste in a pinch, or pre-char some cotton balls over your campfire. Seal them in a dry pouch, and you've got a natural hemostatic. Of course, medieval toilet routines leaned on segregation and boiling water. Castles routed latrines through covered gutters away from living quarters. Monks boiled chamber pot water daily with a handful of peppermint or juniper berries to deodorize and kill pathogens. For preppers, dig a latrine trench at least 30 meters from your water filter station. Cover it with loose soil after each use, and boil all cooking and cleaning water, even if it leaves a herb-infused taste that reminds you of monastery life. Lastly, tinctures of yarrow and garlic weren't Baroque curiosities. Mash fresh garlic cloves with a bit of alcohol, spirits, or even strong beer, and let it stand in sunlight for a week. Strain and use as an antibacterial wash. Perfect for scrubbing pans or treating blisters. Yarrow's wound-healing properties come from sesquiterpene lactones that combat infection. Medieval battlefield medics carried small pouches of dried yarrow to sprinkle on dressing changes. Combine these 5 elements: plantain sealants, char clay packing, sanitary latrine placement, boiled aromatic water, and herbal tinctures, and your camp's hygiene rivals any modern field hospital. No panic button sprays needed, just nature's first aid kit refined by centuries of trial and error. 2. Rope and bucket wells, lifting water, the medieval way. Long before pumps, pipes, or pressure systems, medieval villagers solved the water problem with wood, rope, and balance. In places where water tables ran deep and hands alone couldn't reach, they engineered wells so clever they worked for generations with almost no maintenance. The most reliable of all? A simple rope and bucket setup, refined with a counterweight system that made heavy water feel light. It started with a stable stone or timber ring built around the wellhead, giving structure to the shaft and a safe edge to work from. Above it, 2 upright beams supported a horizontal axle, and mounted at the center of that axle was a wooden drum or spool where the rope could coil smoothly. One end of the rope was tied to a sturdy bucket, and the other, less obvious, was connected to a counterweight. That weight, often a bag filled with rocks or iron scraps, hung freely and balanced the load. The system turned what would have been a 2-person struggle into a one-handed task. When someone cranked the axle, the counterweight pulled in the opposite direction, lifting the heavy bucket as if it weighed half as much. No pulley wheels, no gears, just leverage, balance, and gravity doing the dirty work. Even children or the elderly could haul water without straining their backs. This wasn't just a convenience. It was survival tech. Deep wells provided cleaner water than surface ponds or rivers, and reducing the effort needed to access them meant fewer skipped trips, especially during winter or in times of sickness. Some wells were communal, built near village centers or inside monasteries. Others were hidden inside courtyards or barns for security and year-round access. In castles, deeper wells were often protected behind locked doors or inside towers to prevent sabotage during sieges. For modern preppers, a rope and bucket well with a basic counterweight system remains one of the most robust, repairable, and electricity-free water solutions available. If you have access to a well shaft or plan to dig one, consider adding a simple beam frame above it. The crank axle can be made from pressure-treated wood, and the counterweight can be anything heavy and weatherproof. A sealed sandbag, old dumbbells, or even a concrete block wrapped in tarp. Add a backup pulley if needed, but don't overcomplicate it. What made the medieval version brilliant was how easily it could be rebuilt. If the rope frayed, you spliced in new hemp. If the crank cracked, you carved another from local timber. The whole system could be maintained with hand tools and some basic carpentry. In a blackout, drought, or total systems failure, this setup still delivers clean water. No batteries, no buttons, no excuses. It's slow, steady, and guaranteed to work as long as your arms can turn a crank. And that's why medieval engineers built it to last. We've trekked from smoke-shrouded meat sheds to herb-filled cloisters, mining medieval wisdom for prepper gold. These 5 skills, sparking fires in rainstorms, fashioning self-insulating shelters, sourcing and purifying water, preserving food with smoke and sun, and wielding botanical first aid, aren't dusty museum pieces. They're battle-tested survival blueprints, as relevant now as they were when kingdoms kept falling without warning. So, before you toss one more battery in your bug-out bag, consider practicing one of these medieval hacks. Try a test fire with flint and steel under a kitchen hood. Dig a shallow earth house for grain in your backyard. Crush a plantain leaf and slap it on a fresh cut. When you can do these reflexively, you're not just a prepper, you're a modern-day peasant with a lineage of resilience. If this deep dive sparked an ember of curiosity, blaze that subscribe button and ring the bell for weekly survival secrets unearthed from history's shadowy corners. Drop a comment with which technique you'll master first. Our community is here to trade tips, mods, and epic fails. Now go forth, experiment safely, and may your larder, your fire pit, and your first aid kit be forever stocked with medieval ingenuity.